Well, hello there, and welcome to Tui Snider's Offbeat and Overlooked. Now, today I am going to be talking about the tragic history that in part helped to inspire International Women's Day. And it's a little heavier than I usually do. And you'll also might notice, I know that I have a lot of viewers who come to my Tuesday show. Now, I have a Tuesday show called Tui Snider's Tombstone Tuesdays. And as you can guess from the title, it happens on Tuesdays and it happens to be about cemeteries and cemetery symbols and all of that, which is truly one of my passions and something I'm very interested in. But I realize there are a lot of guests I would like to have and a lot of topics that I would like to cover as well that are fall into my offbeat and overlooked category. So I made a new little banner up there, the green thing, Tui Snider's Offbeat and Overlooked. I'm talking about offbeat places, quirky places, forgotten history, haunted lore, all the other things that I really love to do research about and share with you guys. Aha, looks like I'm starting to get viewers in here. I know this is just a little bit of a spur of the moment. And I got a like as well. Thank you, whoever you are who is watching. All right. So, now, as I was just explaining that from now on, I'm going to be having my Tombstone Tuesdays show. I'm also going to be doing other shows. I haven't decided if it's going to be every Thursday. I've been having some luck with doing shows on Thursday night, so I might do that. And the other show I'm going to do is this Offbeat and Overlooked. And I've already got a really great guest lined up for my first show, which is actually going to be, I think, on April Fool's Day on a Thursday. I've invited Greg Bishop to be my guest, and so I'm super excited about that because he usually is interviewing people, and it will be fun to turn the tables on him. He's a really interesting person. So this show, as I said, though, is my Offbeat and Overlooked show. And as you know, oh, before I dive into it too, so I've been telling you that I do have a YouTube show on Tuesdays, my Tombstone Tuesdays show. And this Tuesday, in fact, I have a really fun guest. Her name is Janice Oberding. We're going to talk about her research in books, including Tiptoe Through the Tombstones. And if her name sounds familiar, it might be because she has been on so many TV shows on the Sci-Fi Channel, History Channel. She's been on Ghost Adventures. She's even spent the night at Alcatraz Island, which is very few people have done this. But I actually met her at midnight in a cemetery during a seance. So we have some fun stuff to talk about. That will be a lot of fun. Now, every time I do a show, I pick some old ad out of the newspaper archives that I do so much research in, and I claim that they are my sponsor. And so for this show's sponsor, I have chosen Wanamaker Daily Store's Seasonable Shirtwaists and Shirtwaist Materials. And shirtwaist is just an old-fashioned term for a button-down blouse. It was originally designed and modeled after men's shirts. So it's kind of a feminine version of menswear back in the day, and they were called shirtwaists. That term has fallen out of fashion, but I thought I would have that be our sponsor today, and I'm sure a lot of you can guess why I chose them as my sponsor. Of course, the real sponsors are my Patreon supporters, so I have to give a shout to them. Shout out to Angel, Scott, Ghost Cat, Ian, Jessica, Ann, NVJ, Ken, Patty, Sarah, Julie, Margaret, Hugh, Mikhail, Naomi, Tim, Pete, Sarah, Rachel, and the other Tui who supports me. And we're not even related. I just think that's so neat. Okay, so let's dive into our topic. I'm sure that a lot of you know that tomorrow, which is March 8th, because I know some of you might be catching this later, so I shouldn't just assume you're watching now, but March 8th is International Women's Day. And, you know, here in America, we don't really celebrate it much. Oh, let me take a peek. Has anyone said hello? I'm getting some highs. Oh, I should give you a shout out here. Debbie's watching from Montreal. Hey, hey, Debbie. All right. Nicole Parent. Hi. Thank you for watching. We've got Scott from Paranormal Gateway. Howdy, howdy. Thank you for watching. And Nicole is also in Montreal, so Canada is in the house. Thanks, you guys, for watching. Mark as well. Thanks, you guys, for joining me today. Hey, hey, yeah, tomorrow's my birthday, boy. The Ramen Raider. You got a birthday coming up too, as I recall. So, thanks, you guys, for coming. All right, so as I was saying, have you noticed that we really don't make that big of a deal out of International Women's Day here in America? I mean, it's one of those things. I've been kind of aware of it most of my life, but kind of aware of it in the way that I'm aware of, National Hangover Day and Science Fiction Day and Pancake Day and Cheese Lovers Day and Secretary Day. Kind of those, they're almost like runner-up holidays that the greeting card companies haven't pounced on. And I find that's kind of interesting. I've given plenty of Mother's Day cards and Father's Day cards, but I've never given anybody a International Women's Day card. A lot of years it has gone right by me. That all changed when I moved to Italy, and I will be talking about that later. But I just wanted to say that I thought it was kind of strange that, there's not a lot about Women's Day. And when I dug in and I looked at the origins for International Women's Day, wow, I discovered some really heavy stuff, some very tragic history, and something that everyone should be thinking about, and we all have some things to be grateful for. So, as I said, International Women's Day, it was inspired by some tragic events, and the event I am talking about specifically is the Triangle Shirtwaist Company Fire. And this was on March 25th, 1911, so over 100 years ago now, about 110 years ago. So now I guess you can tell why I shared the photo of the shirtwaist before, because I used to be like, what's a shirtwaist? So here, let me just kind of set the scene for what happened here. So here we go. Now, it was a late Saturday afternoon, and there were about 500 or 600 employees. It depends on which source you go for. But they were working on a Saturday, like I said, at the Triangle Shirtwaist factory in New York City. This is in downtown Manhattan. And this was their short day. They worked 6 days a week, but on Saturdays they only worked 9 hours. And when I talk about their work day, I should say that when I say a 12-hour day, when I say a 9-hour day, I mean that this was a day you went into your workstation, you sat down, and were very limited. There were no breaks. I'm sure there were some bathroom breaks, but it was very limited. You didn't have a chance to eat. You were like, it was just nonstop. Your 12-hour day was truly a 12-hour day. It wasn't like you have any chance to stretch your legs. And one way that people coped with this was they would try to sneak a cigarette here and there, because when you smoke, it can help suppress your appetite. So if you're not eating for 12 hours and you can sneak a smoke here or there, it might help you cope, keep your energy up. Not really a healthy habit, as we know, but if it helps you cope, then there you go. Now, take a look at that picture. They're nearly all women, as you can see. There's a guy standing in the background, kind of looks like he might be overseeing things. So on each of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory, it took up 3 floors, the top floors of this building, the Ash building. So it was a 10-story building, so the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors were all this factories. And these women, they must have been getting pretty excited because like it was almost quitting time. But unfortunately, somebody either dropped a match or a cigarette into a bucket of scraps, and a fire broke out. And they were not able to get it under control, and for a lot of reasons that we'll talk about. So here is the fire wagon coming to their aid. As you can see, it's a horse-drawn fire wagon. And flames spread. There were a lot of workers, I have to say, that were able to escape. And a lot of them on the 8th floor, actually, the floor where the fire broke out, a lot of them did escape. There was an elevator, there was a fire escape that was working, They were both working at first, but eventually the fire escape crashed to the ground from all the weight of all the people fleeing. So it was not a very good fire escape, obviously. And the elevator, it broke down as well. Um, so this fire wagon, it could really only do so much. Here's a picture of them, what they were doing. They were, spraying it with water. But a very fortunate factor here that I have to bring in is that the ladders on these fire trucks, they only reach the sixth floor. So the ladies they needed to rescue were two, three, four, they were several floors above. Many of the doors to leave, they actually only opened inward if they opened at all. And so all these people pressed against it. That was one thing that kept ladies trapped inside. They had never had any fire drills, so there was mass panic, and it was just a real mess. I'm going to look, I see there's a few comments down here. Let's see here. I think you guys are just talking to each other. Just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing a comment or a question. Of course, I'll scroll back later. So yeah, as you can see, things are going from bad to worse. Here's worse. For one thing, okay, so you can just take a look at this article. Over 150 persons, most of them girls, die as fire traps hapless factory workers in Manhattan skyscraper. It was tragic, and a lot of people who, well, I should add that I don't think I mentioned this yet. Okay, I did say that the fire escape collapsed. I mentioned the elevator quit working. Some people actually escaped, but guess what? They were locked in, so they could only go so far. So they were trapped inside as the building burned. The reason they were locked inside is that as they would leave each day, they would make them go single file, and the women would all be searched, and their purses would be searched, and this was to make sure they weren't stealing. And this, it wasn't just the Triangle Shirtwaist factory doing this. In fact, one of the great ironies when I was looking into this is that the Triangle Shirtwaist factory was considered quite a cut above a lot of places you could work. The situation there was actually a lot better than other places, if you can believe it. The hours, wow, we only work 6 days a week and we only have 9 hours on Saturday. That's pretty neat. So when we talk about how bad things were, this place was not the worst by any means. And other places were locking their employees in, and that just really gets me. Imagine being locked inside. So, as I was mentioning, people would just jump to their death. Here's another article, and one of the things that happened, because they had never practiced fire drills, is these poor terrified girls. They would join hands, 5 or 6 of them at a time. And this is when I was reading all this. It will bring tears to your eyes when you do a little research into this. They would just jump together, 5 or 6 of them jumping at a time. Well, unfortunately, that might have made them feel a little more brave as they jumped out in their sheer terror. But sadly, the combined weight made them break the safety nets. And so soon there were no safety nets. As I mentioned, the ladders didn't reach high enough. They only reached to the 6th floor. These poor girls and women, and a few men too, were jumping to their deaths. There was one widely reported story where there was a couple who worked, and I don't know if they were Italian or Jewish. Most of the people were one or the other. So English wasn't their first language, and the only fire escapes that were labeled were in English, so who knows if they even knew what that said. But there was a widely reported tale of this man and woman who were engaged. They kissed each other, everyone could see them from below, and then they plunged to their deaths. It was really horrible. Okay, so I have to warn you guys, because the next 3 photos are very grim. They're very graphic, and I'm including them because they think they're also very important, and it's not just gratuitous. It's an important part of this tragic history. Here are women. Ugh, it makes me cry. Yeah, and look at that guy. That's a cop looking up. Oh, it's very affecting, and these poor ladies jumped to their death. And what could he do? That poor cop, he's just standing there, I'm sure, just feeling very helpless as this goes on. Here we have afterwards, after they had gathered up the bodies, they're still on the street. They brought a bunch of coffins in, they gathered the bodies up, and then they took them so that relatives could come and identify them. And many were so charred that they were not identified. I did read about some bodies that were actually not even identified until 2011, if you could believe it. So it was just horrible, horrible, horrible. Now they had a funeral, obviously, a large funeral, and here's the funeral procession. Thousands of people attended. And I think it's interesting, look at those horses. It looks like they're draped in some sort of black garment. And in the background, you can see people holding banners. And here's a closer look at those banners. These are the Ladies' Waist and Dressmakers Union, We Mourn Our Loss. And here we have a We Mourn Our Loss, the United Hebrew Trades of New York. And they are marching in this very solemn procession in this very large funeral. Here is one grave. I was able to find a headstone for one of the people, a young Jewish girl who lost her life in the Triangle Shirtwaist fire. You can see at the top here that, I don't know if you can see it, I'm trying to show, that says Hebrew characters means here lies. And then it has her name, Tilly Kupferschmidt. She was only 17. Beloved sister perished in the Triangle Fire, 1911. Now, this one is the most widely known fires, but I've got to say, as I was researching the Triangle Shirtwaist fire disaster, it turns out that it was just one of many such fires. There had been other fires, and for some reason, this one really seems to have been the straw that broke the camel's back, because protests continued and continued afterwards. There had been some protests before, and they'd always been squashed pretty quickly. I'm thinking that maybe it was because, and I'm not an expert on the Triangle Shirtwaist fire, I just wanted to talk about it since I think it's so important, and International Women's Day is tomorrow. But I think there was just something about the sight of these women plunging to their deaths, and it was witnessed by so many that it really was very deeply affecting and had a lasting impression on people. And here you can see some women who are protesting, and I wish I could read all these signs. I see fire traps, something about corpses, here in time, open the shops in time for fire. Yeah, these people were just wanting safer conditions. So you might wonder, what happened to the owners of the fire, of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory? Were they held accountable? Well, yes and no, I suppose. I'm just going to tell you the story here. So the owners were called to court, and there was a trial in December of that year. And here's some things. I'll just read a few little things that they found. The place was a fire trap. The big water tank on top of the building, it was empty. They'd never practiced any fire drills. No one even knew what to do. They had a fire hose that they could have used. No one even used it. Can you believe it? It was just there for show, essentially. Here it says a drill among employees would have saved many lives. And this goes on and on. No effort to use the hose. And so you'd think, wow, so these guys, Max Blank and Isaac Harris, who owned the company, they went to trial. And it seems like the evidence is pretty damning, right? Well, let me tell you a little more about these guys. Okay, these guys were known as the Shirtwaist Kings. They were very rich. They went around and chauffeured limousines. They had very fancy houses. They had a very opulent lifestyle. And, well, they also must have had some great lawyers, because they were charged with manslaughter. But guess what? They were found not guilty. And in the trial itself, they limited how many people could be inside watching it. Even so, there were a whole bunch of family members, you can bet, who were hanging outside the court waiting to see what was going to happen when the jury came back. It was a jury of 12 men. They came back, said not guilty, and They also ushered the Shirtwaist Kings out the back door, and they were kind of shuttling them over to their limo that they had parked nearby so they could just kind of slip away and not have to face the angry crowd out front. One of the men who had lost his little sister in the fire, he caught sight of them slinking off, and he ran after them shouting, "Murderers, murderers, where is the justice? Not guilty," and just they're actually lucky they weren't torn limb to limb. A few years later, in 1914, there was a civil suit, and the Shirtwaist Kings, they gave the families of the fire victims, they gave them $75 per dead worker. Like, wow, is that generous or what? I don't know. I'll let you decide, because meanwhile, these two also they filed an insurance claim, and guess what? Their insurance company awarded them $400 per victim. So they gave the family $75 per victim, and they came out ahead by $325 per death. So yeah, real nice guys. Oh, and I forgot. Okay, here's one more thing about them. A couple years after the fire, there was an inspection. By this time, they were starting to do inspections. This whole Triangle Shirtwaist fire really did inspire a lot of new regulation and safety for workers. But it took a while for this to really take effect. Here's a good example. I think a couple years later, one of the Shirtwaist Kings, there was an inspection at his factory, and they discovered that, oh, surprise, surprise, he is locking his employees inside again. And they decided, okay, we're going to give you a fine. They gave him a fine for $20, which was the absolute legal minimum for a fine that you could give at that time. So, I mean, a slap on the wrist, really, not even that. So let me show you here. Oh yeah, here we have, what do we have here? They were acquitted. Okay. So here, I just thought it was interesting to see that the Ash building still stands to this day, kind of in 1911 in a more modern photo. But after the whole Triangle Shirtwaist fire, there were a lot of changes made. I mean, like I said, it wasn't overnight, but this tragedy was really pivotal in the creation of rules and regulations to keep workers safe. I mean, I've had some crappy bosses in my life. I'm sure you have too, but I mean, I have never been locked inside my place of work. So I feel like we owe these women quite a lot. Now, getting back to the whole International Women's Day, I want to get back to that a little bit, because it wasn't until I spent a year in Italy that I really became aware of March 8th being a holiday. I mean, like I said, growing up in America, I know some people here are in other countries, and I'll be curious to hear your experiences with International Women's Day. But in America, it's kind of a non-holiday. In my perception, at least the parts of the country where I have lived, doesn't seem to be celebrated. Not so when I was in Italy. I tell you, it is a big deal over there. You walk down the street and men you don't even know are blowing you kisses. And I mean, okay, these are Italians, right? They flirt, but it's different on Women's Day. It's very cherishing. Men you don't know walk up and give you flowers, especially mimosas. And I've got a picture of a mimosa tree here. And the other dot I connected when I was living in Italy, which is not as grim, was I realized, oh, that's why they call it, when you have champagne and you pour some orange juice in it, you call it a mimosa. I never knew why. So there, at least there was something else that I learned while I was there. So I thought, when I was looking up the origin of International Women's Day, I was like, I bet that, it must have Italian origin. That must be where it's from. But I was wrong. As I said, its genesis was actually in New York City, and what really caused it to take hold was after the Triangle Shirtwaist fire. I have a little more to say, though, because International Women's Day is a big deal in other countries. It's an official holiday in over 25 different countries, if you can believe that. Some places women get flowers and gifts. There's even places where women get the day off, which is interesting. So why isn't that, left me wondering, okay, so if it had its origins in New York City, and yet it's not an official holiday here in America, why is it such a big deal in other parts of the world? I mean, and I'm surprised if nothing else that, why haven't the greeting card companies just pounced on it the way they tend to do? So, and I was thinking, well, maybe it's a big deal in Italy because so many of the shirtwaist workers that were killed in the fire were Italian. And I'm not sure, really. Really, they weren't mentioning the shirtwaist fire when I lived in Italy, so I'm not sure about that either. But here's what I was kind of able to come up with for why we don't celebrate it much here in America. It's because the very first International Women's Day was organized by this lady, Clara Zetkin. And believe it or not, it was a protest day that she organized, bringing awareness to safety in women's workplaces. But she was inspired by a different fire. As I think I mentioned earlier, the Triangle Shirtwaist fire was not the only horrible fire where women were locked inside while they were working and died. There were other ones, and even ones with a lot of loss of life. I just don't think they were got as much publicity, and perhaps that's because people weren't seen leaping to their death, and that really did leave an indelible picture in the psyche of America at the time. But anyway, in 1909, so that's 2 years before the Shirtwaist Fire, she actually had an International Women's Day march in New York City. And then there had been one shortly before the fire as well. But after that, every year it gained momentum, and people really do say that the Shirtwaist Fire was pivotal in really cementing this tradition. So, but what's weird, okay, here's the reason I think we don't really celebrate it much in America, is because Clara, she eventually moved back to Germany, where was from originally, but she was a communist. So even though International Women's Day is not a communist holiday, her association with it kind of tainted it in the minds of many, especially during the Cold War era. So I think that's one thing that kept this holiday from really taking off. That's my theory. And, in the beginning, International Women's Day did have a more political bent to it. As I was saying, when I was in Italy, it just seemed like they were just saying, hey, we think women are great. So I am very curious, and I keep saying so. Sorry, guys. But do you celebrate International Women's Day, or is it like on your radar? Oh, here we go. Someone says they are trying to do paperwork while I listen, but your story is too interesting. Aw, yeah, it's quite a tale, isn't it? It's really something. Oh, you sound like Yoda here. LOL, stupid I am. No, thank you everybody for watching. And I'm just curious, I think most of us are from America. I know a couple of us are in Canada. But is this a holiday that's even been on your radar? It has not really. Like I said, living in Italy for a year is what put this holiday on my radar and made me realize that, wow, people really do celebrate this. I'd celebrated, knew nothing about the fires. Yeah, I knew about the fires because my mom had told me about them. And but the International Women's Day, I didn't see any connection there. I should say that I used to live in a town, Port Townsend, and they had a bakery there. It was a really great restaurant bakery, and it was called Bread and Roses. And apparently I thought, oh, that's a neat name. I didn't realize that's when my mom told me, well, Bread and Roses was a slogan for women who wanted better. She told me, I was like, oh yeah, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. She said it was like a slogan at these protests because women wanted better conditions. They wanted better, living conditions to be able to afford bread. But they also wanted some roses. They wanted some fun in life, some good things in life too. So Bread and Roses was kind of a slogan for women who were campaigning for better conditions at work. Here we go. Now, I should also tell you guys, I just want to say before I forget, and we can keep talking a little bit, I want to remind you that this Tuesday I have a really fun guest coming, Janice Oberding. She is an author and historian and a paranormal researcher. And we'll be talking about, so that will be my Tombstone Tuesday show. So we will be talking a lot about her book, Tiptoe Through the Tombstones. But I actually met her in a cemetery at midnight for a seance. So that we had a fun way that we met each other. And if her name might be ringing a bell, it's because she has frequently been on the Travel Channel and Sci-Fi and all these other History channels. She's been there on a lot of TV shows. She's been on Ghost Adventures. And so I'm going to have her spill the beans about what that was like a little bit. You can come ask questions too if you would like as well. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys. Let me take a little look here and see if anybody has questions. Yeah, not in a big way, so you haven't. And I want to mix and mingle a little bit. Oh, Patricia's here. Hey, Patty! You catching me live? Nice. Thanks for coming. All right. Oh, I see someone's giving hugs around here. Oh no. I'm sitting about 5 feet away from my worst boss of all time right now. Oh no, man, sorry to hear that. Are you locked in? Hopefully you're not locked in. Oh my. Maybe those guys are wandering the halls of the building forever. Yeah, I know, I wonder. Oh yeah, here Nicole, she's about how the owners, the building owners got all that money for the insurance claim. I know, it's just terrible every which way you look at it. Those guys were just, they were lousy, but it was accepted at that time. So, I mean, I feel a lot of gratitude toward those poor women and the women who protested afterwards to make sure that we actually have to have some level of safety, like quite a bit of level of safety and some rights as workers. So we, when you think about a 40-hour work and all the things that we take for granted when we work, oh, I'm going to have a lunch break. Oh, I get a break. The genesis for all that goes back to this tragedy, and also to all the women and men too who here we go, who would protest on our behalf. Uh-oh, I'm looking over here and I see the word COVID. Somebody's oh, not COVID. Did I catch something about someone has COVID in here? I'm scrolling through, I'm a one-woman show here, so I'm just gonna see comments that I might have missed. Loaf of bread. My old boss burned the office down with a cigarette. It's when they started removing ashtrays. It rolled off the side of a desk into the wastepaper basket. Wow. Well, I wasn't going to say, but the person, one article I read, I think one of the archives said that they think it was a man who started the fire. I don't know if it was a worker, but the Triangle Shirtwaist fire, but wow. So your boss did a similar thing. At least sounds like everyone made it out okay of that fire. Who did I see? Someone has COVID. Oh, you had COVID last April? Oh my goodness. Well, I hope you're feeling better now. My dad had COVID last year, and it's been sleepy. It's been tough for him. But of course, my dad's 90, so it was been very tough on him. I worked for the government when first started out on the switchboard, and if we left during a bomb scare, we were fired. Oh, really? Oh my gosh. That's just wrong. Jeez, I hope they've changed that regulation. Times have changed, and yet there's still room for improvement, that's for sure. This is one of those things I think we need to, it's not something where you ever feel like, yeah, we can just quit regulating the workplace, because people are going to take advantage of their workers, aren't they? Oh, my friend's father. Oh, I see. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope they're doing okay, and I hope, now were you exposed then? Do you have to quarantine? Well, all right. So let's see here. Yeah, we've had about a few people here. I thank you guys for coming. Um, Room for improvement. As I was doing research about horrible bosses, I was thinking about your horrible boss, if you don't mind me saying. It did have to admit, flashed through my head. Yeah, Patty. Ugh, there is room for improvement. My goodness. Well, okay, everybody. I know this is a little shorter than I usually do, and time flies, so if you had any questions or comments, go ahead and say them. I did one thing I was explaining at the beginning before there weren't very many people watching, is that I know I do my show Tombstone Tuesdays on Tuesdays, and I talk about tombstones in historic cemeteries. But I there's a lot of other topics I enjoy too, and so I've created this other thing, my offbeat and overlooked, so I can share my quirky travel and offbeat places I go to, overlooked history, forgotten history, haunted lore, all that good stuff. Oh, oh, here we go. Patty's saying not at all, and being very salty on Facebook about it. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, when I catch up on Facebook, I'll see that. Okay, I didn't. Well, good. Yeah, that your boss certainly deserves it. That was not a nice move. Wow, your dad worked 7 days a week. Yeah, that's no good. Well, all right, everybody. Now, I thank you so much for coming today. Once again, I do hope you will come back on Tuesday. Janice is so much fun. So, and think of some questions you might have for her too. We're gonna have her here. We can ask her stuff about, what's it like being on those ghost shows on TV? She's been on some. What's it like spending the night in Alcatraz? All that. She has been. I've got some photos of some of the cool headstones she's seen as well. Debbie says, love this, learned a lot. Yeah, I know it's a very heavy topic, guys. I usually try to, even when I'm talking about historic cemeteries, I try not to be too heavy. I like to kind of have my shows cheer people up. But I truly feel that this is an important slice of history and just something to think about. The improvements, the people who have gone before us and fought to try and make our lives a little bit better, and the sacrifices they made for us and what that really means. So, hey. Ciao, ciao. Buon appetito, Patty. Thanks for watching, Nicole. Maybe YouTube will actually say, yeah, you didn't get a reminder from the YouTubeamus? Well, hopefully they will send you a reminder. I hope to see you there, Wade. And I'm glad you're looking forward to the show. Okay, everybody. Take care. I hope to see you on Tuesday. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, like and subscribe. Be sure to give me a little of that love. And I will see you guys again soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.